to our bi-weekly proposed project plan, Return to Travel. Our topic today is Rethink, Reimagine, and Restructure, how the meetings management space has survived. Just like to introduce to you our organizational team who has helped put this call together. I am Carmen Smith, Senior Manager of Travel and Events for ICF. Andrew Wilcox is the Manager of Travel, Europe and Asia for ICF. Charlie Rapon is the Team Leader, Sales for Citizen M Hotels. Roman Neumeister, Travel Officer, OSCE. Kathy Rigby, Program Manager, Travel Risk and Safety, CFA Institute. And also part of the ICF team is Tanya Faribault and Carly Van Dyke. This session will be recorded. Please make sure that you keep your phones on mute and turn your cameras off. All questions, please ask in the chat box. And questions will be answered at the end of this call. Any questions not answered during our session will be emailed out along with the recording of this call. At this time, I'd like to introduce our speaker for today, Jeremy Reed. Jeremy has worked in live events and communications industry for the past 10 years. He's worked with large leading brands such as Facebook, Shell, Goldman Sachs, LinkedIn, and he has a great understanding of customer and client needs. Since COVID, things have changed, as we all know, and as we live and as we work. And Jeremy has been pivotal in the reimagining of ICF Next offer and ensuring that they have the right solutions for their clients in an ever-changing communications landscape. And I am pleased because Jeremy is one of our own. He is with our segment called ICF Next. And I would like, Jeremy, just before you start, Jeremy, if you could just give everyone a brief synopsis of what ICF Next is.
Yeah, hey, no problem at all, Carmen. So ICF Next, we are part of what we would call the corporate marketing services arm of ICF. We were put together, started around about 5 years ago to be able to offer ICF clients a real go-to-market strategy in terms of marketing engagement. And about 2 years ago now, I was working for an independent creative agency that were based out of London and also Leeds in Yorkshire. And we were purchased to become part of this larger organisation, and one of our specialisms was live event communications. And so it's really been a fantastic journey to be a part of moving from what was an agency called Vista into ICF Next. And really, we've got a really great kind of go-to-market offering now, which I can't wait to talk to you about today. So if you just give me 1 sec, I'm going to share my screen. And hopefully that's coming up okay. Carmen, can you just give me a thumbs up, or is that working? Is that coming okay?
It's coming through great.
Great. Okay, so thanks, guys. And I believe you'll just be hearing my voice today, so I'll try and click through these slides quite quickly and give you a nice overview of what our offering is. And thinking about what I was going to talk to you about today, it actually made me kind of stop and reflect, which is something that I haven't done for about the last 7 months, to stop and reflect and think about how we have actually managed the pandemic and really thought about putting our clients first in this instance. We've collaborated wonderfully across ICF with our partners, but also thinking about what are our clients' needs coming out of this, and is there an opportunity that we can build on. So I'm going to try and give you a nice overview of what the last 7 months has been and how it's led to what we're doing right now. So as I talk to everybody on this call today, I am acutely aware that we are very much part of a global industry. And what I do is just one piece of the pie. It's just one slice of the pie. It's one piece of the puzzle. But we're all linked. So I'm hoping that this will resonate to all of you in some way. And as I just mentioned, I represent agency world. So we work on behalf of clients and we do work for them and represent their brand or whatever their purpose or communications needs would be. So I'm going to have it very much kind of from a corporate lens, but hopefully the experiences will resonate. So we talked about me, we talked about ICF Next, and today I'm going to talk to you about connected experiences. So thinking back, it was March, April time in the UK. I'm based out of Leeds in the UK, and it was crazy busy. So massively crazy busy start to Q2. We were delivering 2 of our largest customer engagement experiences in one of the top kind of go-to destination venues in London, which is what this image is here on this slide. They were going to be delivered within 2 weeks of each other at the same venue, and we were going to see about 3,000 people come through the door. Really amazing space that you can do so much stuff with. Creatively, you can really push the boundaries of what goes into that. So if you imagine turning that space into a go-karting zone, an exhibition hall, really different vibe, and you'll find these days, particularly within the tech industry, that clients are loving moving into really raw industrial spaces that you can transform. So as you can imagine, it was a pretty exciting time to be working in the events and meetings industry. And we were having these kind of conversations on a weekly basis, and it was looking like a very buoyant year. Anyway, you know the story. That didn't happen, and neither of these events happened. They were cancelled 1 week ahead, no, 2 days ahead of going to site for one of them, and 3 weeks for the other. So that didn't happen. And then what happened in the ensuing weeks was all kind of a bit chaotic, but it kind of just became almost like a contractual management process and exercise. So across all parts, with suppliers, with clients, making sure that everybody got their part, but was looked after at the same time. And then really it was just a domino effect. We just saw around about 80% upwards of our booked events and meetings and pipeline just wiped out. So you can imagine how that was, looking down that pipeline thinking, what are we doing here? How are we going to manage it? And little guidance as to how long this was going to go on for. So, you know, you kind of look at a contingency, you call around the industry, you call your venues, you call your hotels, you call your logistics companies, your DMCs, like, what's the view? What are you doing? How are you working? And everybody was just kind of, you know, I guess, crossing their fingers and hoping it was going to go away. But it became really apparent that this was not a short term, probably wasn't a medium term in terms of, you know, yearly financials and those kind of metrics. And no one was talking about in-person meetings. You know, you try and get your client on a call, but all of a sudden it was more about they were trying to focus on the downturn for their businesses as well. So you take it, you take a step back, you take a deep breath, and you kind of have to rethink. And we were staring, upon this image on this slide, we were staring at physically very empty seats, and, you know, metaphorically, we didn't have anything coming up that we could really go into in the kind of 6 months ahead. And we needed to really think about what our position was in the market and what we could do with our existing capabilities to rethink about our offering. And actually, it was an amazing few weeks. I mean, we just got pushing straight away in terms of thinking about how can we make the most of what we've got, make the most of our network and our capabilities to come out with something that, first, clients are going to need. They have a need for this, not just in terms of what can we sell them, but, you know, how can we add true value to what they're doing, and also kind of the beneficial position of how can we see this moving into the long term. So anyway, 2 reasons why actually we ended up having a very beneficially strong position. We already had a strong digital and participation offering, and by that I mean ICF Next go-to-market offering is in terms of predominantly how you can get anybody to engage with your message more than just hearing it or listening to it, but actually participating with with your product, with your brand, with your service. So we had strong digital online offering and a really good capability in terms of technological innovation. And we had this kind of participation model in terms of getting content out there that people want to engage with and ensuring that they'll stay on message and stay with the brand message moving forward. So going online wasn't going to be difficult for us. And another thing was, and Carmen's going to love this and the team, but we're part of ICF. We're part of this amazing, intelligent, broad network of people. And one thing that I think has been a real positive through all of this has been collaboration, just generally across industry, across networks, across in business, across certainly in terms of our lines of business at ICF, was collaboration and the willing to want to work together to find a solution. So we worked across loads of different divisions and found out how leveraging the ICF network and proposition would strengthen our position going to market with an updated offering and across industries and specialisms. So rethinking, we had that. We sat down with a real big rethink about this, and then starting to reimagine and restructure, something I imagine that many on the call will resonate with. We really had to think about the opportunity moving forwards and how we restructure around that, but also what we're going back out with that clients are going to want to work with. So we were thinking about creating a function or a service that by its very design, and this was really important for us, could move with the times much more fluidly. So, whatever happens going into the future, if things grind to a halt, if we can't meet each other, if we can't see each other, how are we making sure we've got a proposition that works not only in the digital space, but moving into a live environment as well? Maybe, less people, maybe bringing different venues into the picture, maybe doing cross broadcast solutions. And so what we knew about our strong comms heritage, we committed ourselves to not losing sight of the fundamentals. Anytime we approach a project, you kind of set your design principles in place. And we set ourselves a goal of making sure that there was two very core principles that we should never lose sight of. And that is that people still need to connect. It doesn't matter if it's online, if it's on the phone, if it's FaceTime, Skype, whatever. We have to connect. Humans have to connect. And actually, we're needing more personalized moments at the moment. And even if they're shorter, you still need it as a human. So, and then experience. Experience is absolutely everything. So everybody is yearning for a different type of experience online now and meeting people differently. So we need to make sure we're providing something that stands out and, as I say, creates a level of participation with the brand or organization message or person that we're delivering. So connection, human interaction, and an experience, and hence connected experiences. So really exciting times. We're like, great, we've got a name. Okay, right, now we need to put something behind that. Everything we've been discussing, we need to put this into practice. So we've got the principles, but let's start building around this. So we actually started right back at the beginning. It was almost like going into startup mode. What partners do we need? What platforms do we need? If we're going digital first, what do we need to lose? What's going to weigh us down? How do we streamline? How do we stay efficient? How do we upskill? How do we replan about what events could be like in the future? So much to think about. At the same time, staying relevant and having conversations with clients so that they were sticking with us. So, tricky times coming from April, March, and May time, March, April, May. And then actually all of a sudden we were having conversations that there was a real appetite to move into a much more digital focused space. And clients were wanting to talk about how do we still get our message out, whether it's an internal comms campaign, whether it's an online brand engagement, whether it's a social campaign. So things were starting to look up. It was a really great time to be working on it. But the challenge was, we're a traditional events agency. The clients know us for live experiences. They know us for putting on amazing live shows. And so you're having these conversations with clients. Are you still like events, or what's this thing you're talking about, connected experiences? I mean, put simply, they are still events. To a certain extent, I mean, we're actually kind of engaged in a connected experience right now. I'm showing you content, I'm talking to you, you're hopefully engaging with it in some way. We're on a digital platform, we're using Teams. And at the end, we're going to have hopefully a bit of a Q&A and a conversation about it. So, you know, we're interacting on a human level to some extent. But these days, talking through corporate, governmental kind of organizations and clients, like, okay, well, how do you break down these experiences and events? Like, are there any kind of easy, simple ways to bucket it up? And there are. And we've come out with what the offer would be is, you've got virtual, you've got live, and you've got a hybrid experience. Everybody is engaging in virtual experiences literally every single day. We're all doing it every day, meetings, whatever. So it's that, and we see that virtual as purely online digital experience in every sense. So no one's in the same room. We're all using laptops or cameras in some way. It can take many forms, from kind of a one-to-many webinar, all the way through, though, which is really exciting, to like fully 3D virtual worlds. And you can almost, with some of the technology that's out there, create like a Sims level, you remember the Sims game, like level environment, to go around as your own avatar, to explore content, engage with other people, start one-to-one webcam conversations about topics in a exhibition hall that you might be interested in. You can do product demos. There's so much scope within the virtual world. However, it's never going to be what a live experience is from a human connection side of things. That said, we know, and particularly unfortunately with this second wave coming in pretty much globally now, this ain't going to be happening anytime soon on a large scale. The good news is, in some cases it can happen. And some of those, for example, would be press launches. So press launches in hotel spaces or exhibition halls are happening. Even airfield kind of plane hangars, I've been seeing that some of this is happening. Yeah, people are innovating and using what they've already got. And it's amazing to see how you can work with guidelines wherever you are globally to produce something that works and is safe. So they're happening, but there's no way we're getting 100+ people in a room together anytime soon. And I know it can be quite a bitter pill to swallow in some senses, but you know, we're continuing looking ahead down the next Q4, Q1, Q2. The conversations are moving that we can do live, but you can have like 30 people in the space, and the level of health and safety and checks you have to go into. Some clients are just like, no, it's okay. We'll stick away from that for the moment. But our responsibility, certainly as from an agency perspective, is to ensure that clients are getting what they actually need. So even if they don't know it, it's our responsibility to bring them on that journey. And that's very much where the third kind of bucket is coming into its own at the moment. A lot of you would have heard it in some sense, but this kind of hybrid, so this blend of both. And when people say hybrid, oh, that sounds cool, you know, but there's so many options surrounding it. But really, this is where the exciting stuff is happening, and it will continue to happen. I have no doubt about this across any type of meeting space going forward. In essence, this can be anything from a small studio with kind of one live presenter to a broadcast from another, like a live event beamed out across virtual platforms. Or you can retrofit some amazing spaces and again produce live content that can live online, that can be pre-recorded. There's so much scope in this space. But in essence, if you boil it down, there's an element of live in person, whether it's broadcast studio or not, and there's an element of online as well. So that's where we have been and are moving clients towards. Excuse me, I'm not used to talking this long by myself. So anyway, however, important note before I click on here is there's no point in engaging in any of this type of format, understanding you can do virtual or a little bit live, or you can move to hybrid, unless you're actually getting the basics right. And that's where we could really fall back on what we had as an existing offer. And one thing that's really stood out across any of this is that content is king. So we say that a lot in our world. But it really needs to be kind of hammered home in terms of what you're showing them, what's the message, what's the technology, and how are audiences engaging with it. So I guess in some ways the brief hasn't changed, certainly in agency world. It's just evolved faster than we'd expected. So we still need to get a message out, whatever it might be. Whether it's a product demo, whether you're trying to sell a service, whether you're doing a product update, whether you're doing internal comms or brand engagement, whatever it might be, there's still a message to communicate, and it still needs to drive some level of kind of outcome or behavior. So the basics haven't finished, haven't changed, sorry, but we need to think differently. And the biggest challenge is actually kind of time. How much do you have? How much time do you have in a consumer or general digital world these days for people to truly engage with your content? Now, it varies cross-platform, social media or something. In paid media, I think you've got something like 2 seconds to gain attention, and then they're on to the next. It's a bit different in this world, but to give you a sense of what's deemed to be really good online engagement with general videos or kind of white papers or anything in that sense, 2.5 to 3 minutes is really good engagement. So you can imagine our attention span is really diminishing, and even more so because of how we're living right now. You know, for example, in front of me, I know I'm a bit of a rarity. I've got 3 screens. I've got so much stuff going on all over them all day. I've got emails, I've got, Teams calls, Teams chats, this, that, and the other. It's really hard to gain someone's attention and keep them engaged, because it's a lot easier now to just kind of go on mute, turn your camera off and go elsewhere. I'm kind of hoping that's not what's happening now. But if we kind of boil down this slide here, content, I put this together just to show where it's moved over the last few months. Traditionally, thinking about engaging in rock or pop concerts, how people have been, Rolling Stones innovating right at the beginning and giving kind of free concerts and keeping people engaged, down to collaborative toolkits. We use something at ICF called Mural, but that's actually becoming the new kind of brainstorming. That's the new collaborative meeting tool for us here, and it really drives amazing outcomes. Then you've got all the way through to, I'm a bit of a football mad fan, so I've stuck in here the Premier League, but it will be the same globally in terms of how are you getting audiences to engage with what you're doing and leveraging technology to do that. And then, down in the middle, I've got, this is actually really exciting for me personally. This is an image of Katy Perry did an American Idol final, but she did it with one of our technology partners for the event space, who have this thing called an extended reality studio, where you can manipulate and do incredible stuff with content, but put people in the space as well. So that is traditionally an event type of technology, but they've leveraged it, and movies actually, apologies, but they've leveraged it to put it into, okay, she would have done this as a live experience. How can we make sure we do it safely, but really pump up the experience? And then we've got all the way to like augmented reality and virtual reality. So these technologies have really been leveraged. But again, what we realized is Great, we understand how that we want to do that kind of thing. How do we do it, and how do we be compelling and creative with the content? So we've used that as an opportunity to really go back and challenge and think differently about how audiences are engaging with whatever you're putting out there. So this comes at the start of any conversation we're having. If we get a briefing about 100 people online meeting through to 15,000 people end of year get together kind of thing, how are we communicating with them? What tools of engagement are we using, and how are we taking a traditional experience that they're used to having and turning it online so they're still engaged with it? So they're quite tricky, kind of big questions to ask yourselves. But it's been a fantastic experience and learning curve as we've gone along it. But another thing that really needed to focus in on was audience. Now, I don't know if you guys recognize this, but this was the Democratic convention that was put on maybe a month or so ago. But they went full on digital experience. And I've stuck this in here because that is a connected experience at its very core. It's a live event. It's out of a broadcast studio. It's bringing in technology and engaging with people that ordinarily may have been in the room. But the opportunity that it provided was a much larger reach digitally that they would have normally got if they just done it in a few convention centres. So I've put this in there, but if you think about of audiences that you engage with, there's so many different types. There's so many different ways of, different people that want to hire a space or a meeting room and a hotel or a venue. There's so many different people that have travel requirements, whether you're VIP, you want to go first class, you want to go coach, or whatever it might be. You've got to segment your audience appropriately and know how you're going to target them. So it's very much, kind of marketing campaign and very fundamental basics. But at ICF Next, we break down our audience types into 3 buckets, and we call them the 3 C's. And they're broken down by colleagues, so internal engagement, customers, so anything kind of external consumer engagement, and then citizens. So 3 C's: colleagues, customers, citizens, and obviously citizens in terms of public government messaging, of which ICF has a massive part to play globally within European Union, but also very, very big contracts and important contracts with the US federal government. But we started thinking, right, so there's these 3 audiences across the world, across this industry. How are people engaging, and what's the innovation in these 3 markets? And I tell you what, it was kind of mind-boggling to see what innovation and technology was out there when we started looking. So Democratic Convention is a great example of how leveraging technology to reach your audience in a compelling way and think about content. Now, the delivery of that I leave to you at your own discretion, but also all the way to things like Burning Man. Right, I would never have thought of putting Burning Man and Democratic Convention in the same sentence together, but the fundamentals were the same. Burning Man created a whole 3D online world of what they go to every year in the desert, and they were able to beam in the world-class DJs and artists and have their conversation hotspots, and it just became this incredible community. And they were able to continue doing that event. They just moved it online. So I guess the point I'm making here is that all audiences still require a level of engagement. It's just understanding what their needs are and how to communicate with them. And as I say, I think this is just where the meetings, events, general industry has come into its own, and it's actually quite a blessing to see that happen, in terms of the collaboration that was gone on between all levels of organizations across the pandemic, in terms of diversifying the offer. If you think about we in the UK, we have our COVID hospitals are called Nightingale hospitals, but all our largest venues in the UK just said, no worries, we'll turn them into large scale hospitals. So just using what you've got and being innovative with the way in which you can make the most of what you've got. And we did the same in terms of what are we communicating, who are we communicating to, and how are we doing it? So, I mean, that's kind of all very nice and good and well, but I think what's been a real interesting process over this journey has been how you need to be confident in your ability and knowledge of what you do. And there were moments where I was like, well, this is all new, I'm not sure, blah, blah, blah. But you need to have a conviction in if you're doing something new, knowing that you can follow through with it. And we did that. But one of the most interesting parts of the journey was taking our existing clients on the journey with us. So they knew it was new for everybody, but making sure that they knew that we had our arm around them and that we were putting their needs first was really important. And what we very quickly realized was that everybody, without exception to begin with, everybody was running to a platform. So, well, we need to do it on Teams, or we need to do it on Skype, or have you seen Intrado? What, I don't know, have you heard about this? Have you heard about that? And on 24, and this dominated the conversation. Don't get me right, big caveat here is, find out first and foremost what you are allowed to use, because there's so many data protection rules around it. But our positioning of this, when we start thinking about engaging with people in the right way, particularly from the platform is the stage. Okay, so break it down to its fundamentals. What you put on the stage is the most important part of it. Right, you can go and watch the best play or theatrical experience you've ever had in a 50-seat pub in East London. That's just the stage. It's what's being put on the stage. What are you being told that is really the most important part, and that links back to the content. So we actually started saying, well, again, virtual is an experience. It's not a platform. Please don't run to it. And if you know you can only use one or two platforms, no problem. Let's make sure we work the content, the messaging, the film, the speakers. Let's make sure we work it to really leverage whatever functionality or availability your platform has got. And actually, I think most people will agree on this call, but we were heading in this direction of a digital first kind of world anyway. What it has done is absolutely propelled and sped this up. But in the events industry, technology is always such an important part, and we were starting to see hybrids beginning anyway. A lot of it was being broadcast out, and there were early innovators to that. So there was already kind of a bubbling under. It was almost like a cottage industry, as it were, that was going on in the background with all of this. And wow, they've just accelerated. And the I think if you do a virtual platform search in Google now, you get something like 14 million results immediately. Like, there's a lot going on out in the world. So yeah, everyone focusing on platforms, great, it's important, but focus on the audience and the content first. Then you can leverage what you've got to play with. And then, so, I mean, this is what this is about here, really. Connected experiences, online, live, hybrid. What are you putting into that people are truly wanting to actually experience? So we ended up coming out with curation and creative. So what are all the things that you're curating to put onto whatever platform you're doing, even if it's just a Teams call? Have you got videos? Have you got different speakers? Have you got a really amazing slide deck or content that you can show? And is that going to give you participation? Is it going to give you a level of engagement that you actually want out of that meeting? And then one thing that has been a real benefit and pro out of all of this is data. So data-driven measurement. Certainly in the corporate commercial world, it's so important. And these platforms, by their very nature, you can find out who joined, you can find out who left and when, you can find out who answered what poll at what point, there's a lot to gain from the technology. So we see it as a stage, and you just need to think so carefully about what you're putting onto it. And I touched very briefly there just on curation. So I would say that ICF Next is in a very, very beneficial position because we have some of the leading minds across the globe, in some instances, in some industries, in terms of consultancy and strategy and creative and design and data analytics. So we were like, wow, we've got so much we can lean on here that actually is more than producing a broadcast out of the studio. We can really go into thinking about audience engagement on a completely different scale. And then you've got to think about film, audio. You've got to think about in the real basics of your speakers and facilitation. Some people are petrified of going on a phone call or presenting on a Teams call. And it's just the same as getting them up on a stage in a theatre or in a venue. You need to make sure that they're prepared and they're comfortable with the technology and the constraints that they've got available to them. And then data and measurement, like I say, just so important. And then I've just kind of put this in here as a reminder to myself as I was putting all this together, in terms of, if someone were to ask you tomorrow, okay, I've got this virtual event that's coming up, I've got to get like 5,000 people together somehow. I don't know what to talk. We've got this kind of message we need to talk about. I don't know how long it needs to be. I don't know who should be talking about it. I don't know what technology I've got available. I don't know time zone differences, all that kind of stuff. Kind of 6 points that you just really, to us, we challenge ourselves on every time, you know, like, well, think about how much time you are actually asking of people here. And realistically, you know, it's a lot easier for them to just switch off the webinar than it is to leave the room. So attention is shortened, and you need to be really conscious of that. Think beyond the experience. Everybody gets so focused on that 90 minutes, for example, but there is a whole experience that sits around that. From the moment you get your first email, right? So the moment you get an inbox, you know, you get a webinar invite in your inbox of whatever it might be, and I can imagine everybody on this call that has gone up exponentially. You've got to make sure you're actually engaging people from the very moment that they get that communication, all the way through to how can it live on post-event? What's the content post-event? What's the network or community post-event? And can you crowdsource? Can you get people to be engaging with that event before it happens? Blend the techniques has been such an important learning curve for us. So lots of breaks, of course, if it's going to be a long experience. Short sessions. Think carefully about the message and how it's going to hit home. But also this multimedia approach, and I'll touch on that. I'm going to talk to you a couple of jobs that we've done recently, which will kind of hopefully bring all of this to life. So blend the techniques and the multimedia approach. I've put here, make it meaningful. Explore together with whoever you're discussing about this event, what is actually the end goal here? Because so many people will run into it and say, well, we did something last year and we did it in a restaurant because we needed to get our top clients together. We need to do something this year. Well, okay, let's boil it down to its absolute fundamentals and what are we trying to get out of this? Why does it benefit the end user? I touched on the perfect platform, and I mean more than just a platform. This, so you've got to get the tech right. You've got to get the right tech, and you've got to use it in the right way. And I kind of probably appreciate that's where the minefield has been over the last few months of certainly meetings and events and getting people back together. There is a plethora of choice out there. But you've got to get the right tech and use it in the right way. And I guess that's where one of our USPs has really come into play for helping and guiding our clients through that. And content is king. That has not changed. It's more than words. It can be film, it can be stock imagery, it could be the way that if you watch a movie and there's just still black and white content and music in the background, you can use that to produce emotive reactions in a virtual world. You just got to think carefully about how you leverage that style of delivery. So bigger, bolder, braver, and better than anything that's been done before is how we set our sights. And then a couple of things to just kind of showcase how actually a lot of this comes to life. So we've done a lot. There's only a certain amount of stuff that I was actually allowed to show because of some of our clients. But recent projects for us, Lloyds Banking Group in the UK, the largest retail bank in the UK. Every quarter, they get their top leaders together, 300 of them, and we help them run their strategic leadership group. So extremely important event for this business. And we'd historically, for about the last 5 years, we'd run this for them in person. And this is that kind of, I guess, almost a very proud moment of how do you bring that same client on the journey into a completely unknown world. And I've got to say, I think we did excellently at that. And you can see here that image top left is that turned into our kind of technology control hub. We ended up having something like 16 speakers being brought in off a Teams call that we then pushed out to a virtual event platform. We had VTs, we had external speakers, we had pre-records, and we had beautiful content, and it all came together as a very, very polished event. Then we had recently done what I would coin as the hybrid experience for Asda. For our US friends, that's basically one of Walmart's businesses in the UK. Although, funny enough, they've literally just sold it to some very wealthy family in the UK. But likewise, this was an experience that we had always done for them in one of the largest exhibition halls in the UK. We'd get a few thousand people into this exhibition hall, and it's called their Golden Quarter Conference. So essentially going into the Christmas period, Black Friday, Halloween, and so on. This is their massive call to action event that showcases all their Christmas lines, their Halloween lines, going into Black Friday, New Year. This is their big event, and this was a massive success for them. We did it out of what is their merchandising centre of excellence based in Yorkshire. We transformed it into a massive broadcast studio, and we brought the speakers and took it out to the business. Now, in that instance, we actually ended up kind of manipulating Zoom, which is their video conferencing software, and producing a highly polished experience on Zoom. So not a Zoom as you know it. This was kind of rolling videos, really lovely sting animations across it, music, external speakers, entertainment. If you have technology, you can always up the game, and that was a great one for us to showcase how you can use Zoom in a different way. We recently, with some of our EU colleagues, did a mass citizen engagement event on the future of renewable energy across the European Union. We put this online in 6 weeks from the point at which COVID hit. We knew it was going to be a cancelled event, and we turned this into a mass engagement online experience with pre-recorded content, with interviews, and everything I've just discussed before and more in 6 weeks. It was a mammoth task to get that online, but the engagement was up something like 45% on the previous year. And it's touted as a great success, and they're thinking now, is this how we want to continue doing it in some way? And do we have smaller periphery events around the outside? And then we're doing stuff for BMW, we're doing more stuff for Lloyds. We're actually winning events contracts at the moment with large scale global businesses because of the connected experiences offer, which is something that I'm just hugely proud of. And I know I've just put this in as I know everybody's going to want to see this in the rearview mirror, and I'm kind of on board with that. I'm really looking forward to Christmas and just kind of winding down for a couple of weeks. But I guess as a reflection, going back to the start of this, pre-COVID, we were working predominantly in the corporate commercial live event space, internal comms and customer experiences. And now going into 2021, due to our ability to collaborate across the business that we worked in, collaborate across the industry we work in, we've been able to kind of transcend industries and disciplines. And we're in a very lucky position. I'm fully aware of that, to be working in the government space now. We're doing more in the government space than we had ever imagined doing. And so that's just, you know, the ability to leverage technology and innovate and stay core and true to our fundamentals has really seen us get through this. Thank you. Thanks for hearing my ramblings. I hope it's been beneficial in some way, and it's been a really great opportunity to actually take stock and think about the industry and give an agency view, which is hopefully a bit of a good news story, which I think we need at the moment. So thank you so much for listening.
Jeremy, we really appreciate you taking the time. I know that we've had a mixture of audience, and I know there were some of my hoteliers are on and some meeting planners. And so this is, I think, was very helpful information. And, you know, the whole premise of this call is to help people navigate and transition from what we used to know to where we're going. And so this has really helped. One of the questions, and we did get a couple of questions, but one of the questions we wanted to know, for your customers, was this a hard sell? Did you have a hard time convincing them to move to a virtual environment? What was that like in gaining the trust of some of your customers?
Amazing. Yeah, great question. In truth, some clients were harder than others. Some, you know, a lot of it was based on coming with a brief in terms of, we've got this thing we need to do. How the hell do we do it? We haven't got a clue what we're doing. And so there's always been an appetite, but yes, it's kind of been a journey together. And we've very much had to put our arms around a lot of clients along the way and said, look, this is okay, it will come off. I know, you know, it's almost risk and reward in equal return. You take the risk, you're going to get the reward. And I think some of the clients we've showcased are kind of pioneering in this space now, and it's really standing them in good stead. Yes, in simple answer, yeah, some were easy, some were difficult, but we've helped guide them, and that's where we see our value.
So it sounds like flexibility is the name of the game with this, and being able to transition. A couple of questions. So one question came across was, we know that there are more hours virtually, you know, putting into virtual events than on-site meetings for meeting planners. How are you and your staff balancing the burnout and the hours it takes to work an event, to work it to that end? And secondly, let's see, there's different roles, some that have not been done before. So maybe, you know, you mentioned your 3 screens. So how are you balancing all that, and how is your team, and how do you work with burnout and all those various factors?
I guess to begin with, great question, by the way, because again, it's a bit of a reflection generally in terms of how to approach these things. But to begin with, no, I don't think any of us were managing it. I think we were just running like rabbits in a headlight to try and find a solution and create the solution. So the hours in the burnout, you're right, it was real. It really was. But we actually consciously took a step back to say, we've lost our discipline here. We're not being disciplined with our time. We're giving it to everyone. We're not spending the time producing the right level of content and audience engagement that we have been. And actually, I would say, and of course, you know, you throw into the mix furlough and general kind of government support schemes were amazing to keep people in work, but it ended up with a much depleted kind of live team at any one moment. So luckily for us, we've brought pretty much everyone back off furlough now, and we're able to spread the resource appropriately. Upskilling has been a massive part of it, so learning new skills and making sure we're giving it the right time to training, which we know, give it now, in the long term you'll get it back. And that's been something we've been really disciplined with. So everybody has to be on the same page. But burnout was actually a real problem in the beginning. I would say in May, June time, we were all just 11 o'clock, half 11, 12 o'clock at night. Everyone's online, everyone's messaging, trying to find out the solution. But we've actually got a very, very strong offer now that requires us to not work the hours that we were. But I go back to that point. It was startup mode. It really was kind of start again, refresh, which was exciting and scary in equal measure. I hope that answers it. But yeah.
No, it's very appropriate, and it's appropriate for all of us, regardless of the space that we work in, because there are many that are not used to working virtually or working remotely, and so having that balance, because you're home pretty much 24/7, and particularly with the lockdown, it was even worse. So that was it's great to know that the strategies that have come forth and how to work better and how to do better. Another question that I have, and for anyone that does have a question, please put those in the chat box. We won't get to all of them today because we are running out of time. However, we will make sure that we answer any questions that you have when we follow up and send you out the recording of this webinar. But one of the things that I wanted to know in particular is, with live events, particularly in Europe, many of the events sometimes run 3 and 4 days over, for many hours. With you going virtually, how has the length of those events changed? And with the virtual, you talked about engagement. How has that changed, and what are some of the things that you've had to institute to compensate for that?
Yeah, so very good point. And it's amazing when you look at an agenda, when you are given the choice of what's a must-have, what's a nice-to-have, how quickly some things exit the agenda. So I think what we found was you traditionally hire a space for a certain amount of time, and therefore you want to get the most out of it. That's basically how it was happening. You right, well, we've got a space for 2 days, we want to do 2 days of content, and we need to fill the time appropriately. When really the key messaging that people want to come along to is it a product launch? What's the product? What am I going to learn from it? Is there anything interesting? Is there a strategy update? Is there an internal kind of major update that we want to embed? And it's surprising to find how many traditional 2-day events can be whittled down into potentially a half-day experience that you can then spread out. And that half-day experience doesn't have to be in one hit. You can do it across 2 days. You can do 2 hours on the morning of one day. You can do 2 hours on the afternoon of one day. And that's where the ability to leverage technology in that way and be conscious of people's time has really been a learning factor. Yeah, whittling it down has been quite easy actually, because people just start slashing. Like, don't need that. We want to focus on that. That's the key message. And then what was your other part of the question? Sorry, Carmen, in terms of general engagement and keeping people engaged.
Yeah, I just, and I think you pretty much answered it, with the change of time and how do you compact that, to a virtual, and how do you keep people engaged? Because it is slightly different. And maybe with this, I can add a little bit into this question, but what have you done with your events in terms of participant engagement that you felt have kept you on your toes and has been the most fun to do?
Yeah, I mean, fun is a key thing there, and I think everyone will agree as well. We're a good few months into this now, and I think most of our personal barriers has dropped. I mean, I'm in my kitchen. No one would have seen my kitchen before this. This was my private space, but now this is my meeting room. So I think that level of personal engagement these days has really helped with people getting on board with different kinds of things. So previously you'd get like a bit of an energizer at a conference, get on your chairs, do something, kind of let your hair down, do a Mexican wave, all the kind of little basic things. But we've been doing things like opening up with a quick stretch and yoga session, and it's almost like, put your hands up the last time that you guys stretched or went for a walk. And there's like 2 people. It's like, right, well, we're going to make the most of this time, and we're actually going to think differently about how we approach this meeting. And we're going to energize ourselves before we get into what we're about to do. So small participatory and joint activities have been a really great way of engaging. And then it all comes down to the technology and what's available to do with it. So gamification has been great fun. Online quizzes, polling, anything you can actually do with your colleagues or friends or other people tends to be something that the guests or delegates want to engage with.
Well, wonderful. That actually leads into our final question for the day. So with that, in terms of future meetings management, you're talking about technology and virtual meetings. Do you think that the use of virtual reality technology will be more prevalent going forward?
Undoubtedly. I can't see this. It will slow down to a certain extent when we can go back, and more people will naturally want to be out and about meeting each other. When that is, no one knows. So undoubtedly, whilst we're in this period of transition, innovation will continue, new technologies will emerge. There will be new technologies and products and services that no one would have imagined, I can't think, that will be coming out to kind of mass engagement over the next few months to years. And I think it's here to stay. So we just need to start understanding and getting on board with it. Yeah. And it's exciting and scary in equal measure. Yeah.
I agree. Well, with that said, thank you, Jeremy Reed. Jeremy, again, for those of you who may have come on late, is the Senior Project Manager for ICF Next. He is located in the UK in one of our Leeds offices, well, virtually home for now. But thank you so much. This has been a great session talking about rethinking, reimagining, restructuring. Those are all the things that all of us on this call need to do, regardless of the space we're in. And thank you again, everyone. Thank you for your time. We see you hopefully in 2 weeks. I know this is getting into the holiday season and the end of the year. So, please keep your eye out for any new invites for our virtual meetings. We typically have been doing this every 2 weeks, but we are aware of the different holiday seasons coming into play with Thanksgiving and Christmas, etc. But again, thank you, and we hope to see you in 2 weeks. Take care and have a great afternoon. Thanks again, Jeremy.